Most people believe wealth is about money. It is not. What rich families actually pass down is invisible, and that invisibility is precisely why it works. This is the wealth code. Today we are going to dismantle the lie that keeps generational wealth locked inside certain families, and show you exactly what is really being transferred, and why nobody teaches this in school. Here is a fact that should disturb you. A study from Ohio State University found that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation. 90% by the third. That sounds like wealth does not last, until you look at the other side. The families that do not reset. They have been wealthy for 5, 6, 7 generations. Some trace their wealth back to before the Industrial Revolution. The Rockefellers. The Rothschilds. The Waltons. These are not lucky people. These are families operating a system that most of us will never be shown, because we are on the wrong side of it. And here is what almost nobody talks about. The families that reset to zero every generation. They are not failing because they lack intelligence or work ethic. They are failing because they were never given the code. The uncomfortable truth is this: wealth is not inherited. Wealth is installed. There is a fundamental difference between leaving your children money and leaving your children the psychology, the structures, and the relationships that generate money. One is a deposit. The other is an operating system. Most middle-class and working-class parents who do accumulate something, pass down the money. Then they watch, heartbroken, as it disappears within a decade. Why? Because the children were given the asset without the architecture to hold it. Think of it this way. If you handed a Formula One car to someone who had never driven, they would crash it. The car is not the problem. The preparation is the problem. Wealthy families understand this at a bone-deep level. Most other families do not even know the conversation exists. Let us go into the psychology, because this is where it gets fascinating. Psychologist Dr. Paul Schervish at Boston College spent decades studying the ultra-wealthy. His research revealed something striking: wealthy families do not just teach financial skills. They cultivate what he called a sense of agency, the deep belief that you have the power to shape your financial reality, not just respond to it. This is not generic confidence. This is a specific, trained psychological orientation toward money. On the other side, researchers Sendel Mullainathan and Shafir published a landmark study in Science magazine in 2013. Their concept, scarcity mindset, showed that financial stress literally reduces cognitive bandwidth. People under financial pressure make measurably worse decisions, not because they are less intelligent, but because scarcity consumes mental resources. Here is the brutal implication. Poverty is partly self-reinforcing, not because poor people are flawed, but because the psychological conditions of poverty impair the exact decision-making needed to escape it. Wealthy families engineer the opposite conditions from birth. Children grow up with what psychologists call a secure base, financial and emotional, which frees up cognitive bandwidth for long-term thinking. And there is one more layer. Carol Dweck's growth mindset research at Stanford shows that beliefs about whether intelligence and ability are fixed or developable are formed early, and directly predict financial outcomes. Wealthy parents embed growth mindset language into daily life. Not as a productivity hack. As an inheritance strategy. Now let us talk about the system, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. The legal and financial infrastructure that wealthy families use is largely invisible to everyone else. Not because it is secret, but because it is never taught in public schools, rarely explained by mainstream financial media, and frankly, not in the interest of certain institutions for you to understand it. Here is what wealthy families actually use. Family trusts, specifically dynasty trusts, which can hold assets for multiple generations without triggering estate taxes at each transfer. In some U.S. states, a dynasty trust can legally hold wealth for up to 360 years. 3.5 centuries of compounding, shielded. Family limited partnerships, or FLPs, allow wealthy families to transfer assets to children at a discounted valuation, legally reducing gift and estate tax exposure. The IRS allows this. It is entirely legal. You simply have to know it exists. Step up in basis, a tax provision that resets the capital gains cost basis of assets at death, means heirs can inherit massively appreciated assets and pay zero capital gains on decades of growth. This single provision transfers billions in untaxed wealth every year. Who benefits from you not knowing this? Banks that charge excessive estate fees when there is no trust in place. Tax authorities who collect more when families have no structure. And frankly, any system that benefits from a passive consumer class rather than an active ownership class. Knowledge here is not just power. It is generational leverage. So what do wealthy families actually do differently, beyond the legal structures? First, they have what researchers call family financial councils. Regular, structured conversations about money across generations. Not to show off wealth. To transfer values, philosophy, and decision-making frameworks. Children in these families hear adults discuss risk, investment rationale, and failure, openly, from a young age. Compare that to families where money is a taboo topic. Where children never hear a single substantive conversation about finances before they are 18 and suddenly navigating real money decisions completely alone. Second, wealthy families invest in social capital with the same intentionality they invest in financial capital. They place children in environments, schools, clubs, boards, philanthropy organizations, where they form relationships with other wealthy, connected people. Not out of snobbery. Out of a clear-eyed understanding that networks generate opportunity. The research backs this. Economist Raj Chetty's Opportunity Atlas project found that social capital, specifically cross-class connections, is one of the strongest predictors of upward mobility. Wealthy families manufacture these connections. Everyone else leaves them to chance. Third, and this one is deeply underestimated, wealthy families teach ownership psychology versus employment psychology from childhood. Children grow up watching parents who own things, businesses, real estate, equity stakes. The mental model that gets installed is, you build and own, you do not just earn and spend. Fourth, they separate emotional money decisions from structural ones. Family offices and trusted advisors create institutional-grade discipline around wealth decisions. Emotions are human. But wealthy families build systems that do not depend on emotional self-control in the moment. Now, this is the part most channels skip over. Because real answers are harder to package than inspiration. Step 1, start the financial conversation now. Not when your children are 18. Now. Research from the University of Cambridge shows that money habits and attitudes are largely formed by age 7. If you are not intentionally shaping that formation, someone else is. Advertisers. Peers. The default culture of consumption. You do not need to be wealthy to give your children a wealth-oriented mindset. You need to be intentional. Step 2, build legal architecture before you think you need it. A basic revocable living trust is accessible to most people, not just the ultra-wealthy. It removes your assets from probate, which can consume 3 to 7% of an estate in fees and time. For most families, this is the single highest return legal investment they will ever make. Consult an estate attorney. The cost is a fraction of what you will protect. Step 3. Invest in your own financial education as aggressively as you invest in your children's school education. The wealthy do not just pay for their children's MBA. They become fluent in the language of wealth themselves, tax strategy, trust law, investment structures, insurance as an asset class. You do not need to become a lawyer. You need to know enough to ask the right questions and hire the right people. Step 4. Engineer your children's social environment with intention. This does not require wealth. It requires strategy. Seek out communities, programs, mentorships, and environments where your children will form relationships with people who have an ownership mindset. A summer internship at a small business. A junior board program. An entrepreneurship club. These are not luxury extras, they are generational investments. Wealth is not what you leave behind, it is what you build inside the people who will carry it forward. The families that stay wealthy for generations are not lucky, and they are not smarter than you. They are operating a system, psychological, legal, social, that most people never even know to look for. But now you know it exists. And knowing is the first transfer. Here at the Wealth Code, we publish a new video every single day, each one designed to give you one more piece of the code that the wealthy never advertised. If this shifted something for you, subscribe, because tomorrow we go even deeper. And if you want to keep going right now, watch our video on the hidden tax strategies that wealthy families use that your accountant has probably never mentioned. It will change how you see every dollar you earn.